Uh,
Yeah, I'm okay. How are you?
I'm not too bad, thank you. Yeah, I'm okay, thanks. Yeah, it's good to see you. It's
And you?
it's a few weeks since I saw you. I saw you at Barnoldswick. You know that gig,
Yeah,
that pub downstairs. That was cool, wasn't it?
yeah, it was good that. I like doing that because we went from proper gigs in Scotland to this little tiny, no stage and like little amps, and it was a real turnabout. But I like changing hats and all that. It's good.
It was really hot down there, and I took Melanie Williams with me. She was she's been doing a bit of singing with you, hasn't she? But
Yeah,
it was a cracking little gig. That I mean, the audience was literally just sitting right in front of you.
yeah, yeah. We just did one in Chester like that, only it was in open air courtyard,
Yeah.
um, in the middle of Chester,
Oh yeah, that
and
was
I didn't.
last Friday or Saturday,
Like Sunday, I think it was. Yeah,
was it?
and it was brilliant. It was much better than I expected because
Yeah.
they were right up front, and I was seeing people from like Liverpool and Warrington and Birkenhead. All these people that used to come to gigs. They were right at the front. It was really good vibe,
People that you
and
met.
it was a balmy night, so we really enjoyed playing there.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it's good. You never know what to expect with gigs nowadays. I mean, we're just coming up to doing festivals soon. This week, tomorrow, Guildfest, and next week, one in Colchester. But you don't know what to expect when you get to the little gigs. But it's always a pleasure. I tell you, it's really good.
The first time I saw you on the sort of comeback thing was in 2022, and I saw you at Rebellion,
Oh,
the punk festival in Blackpool.
yeah.
And it was the first time that Mike Bennett was singing with you. And I
Uh-huh.
remember him being very, very nervous about it. But
Yeah.
it kind of all gelled and came together because obviously Derek had died only a few months earlier. And then suddenly
Mm,
you got a new singer. And
mm,
it all felt very, very new, but it sounded great. I mean, with you lot behind him,
yeah.
arguably the best rhythm section that anybody could put together, it was going to
Yeah.
be okay, wasn't it?
Yeah. That we were filling in for somebody that pulled out. I can't remember who it was. One of the
Yeah.
punk. And we just decided to just risk it for a biscuit and do it. We hadn't had much rehearsal with Mike by the couple of rehearsals or something. And there's a lot to get your head around, with Ian's lyrics. They've got to trip off the tongue just so.
No, I know. It must have been terribly stressful him to
Yeah,
learn
yeah.
them all, for goodness sake. Can you imagine?
I know. God. Well, I had to do it because when Ian passed away, we decided to still doing gigs, and we did Dingwalls. And I was bricking it because I had stepped up to the plate and I'd, only done backing vocals. So I had to
You're
learn things like
singing.
to be cheerful and all that. And I
Okay.
had sheets all over the floor. And it was at Dingwalls. And Phil Jupitus was the DJ that night.
Yeah.
And he came up to me after the sound check and he whispered, he said, I know all the words to all the songs, Johnny. And I went, right, you've got Clever Trevor, Sweet Cheap Business. I gave him a bunch of songs. And he came out, he did a fabulous job because he's a good MC as well, Phil.
Yeah. Yeah. I've
And
seen
he
Bill
he
Cupid
was,
in a play. He was actually very good. He swore a lot. I think he was playing at the Lowry in Manchester.
yeah,
I took
yeah.
my daughter and she was like closing her ears. She was only about 13 or something.
Oh, God.
Kind of wish I hadn't. So thanks for joining me today. This is
Yeah.
Turnbull from the Blockheads and many other bands. This is Nigel from Louder Than War, and we're going to have a bit of a chat. There you go. That's the one.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a bit of a chat, and what we're going to do is some of it will feel a little bit like record collectors interviewing you because I'm a bit anal when it comes to the past. So starting from the very beginning, going through your first bands, The Chosen Few and Skip Diffity and all that sort of stuff, because I'm very interested in that 67, 68 era, and then pulling it all the way through to the Blockheads and what you're doing now.
Yeah.
You released your own solo album in 2012, and I believe you're working on another one, which has been
Yeah.
somewhat delayed since lockdown.
Uh,
Blockdown? You call it lockdown?
I
um,
do.
yeah,
I had the tracks compiled. I had 22 to choose
yeah.
when lockdown happened, and I wasn't allowed back to the studio down at Lofty's in Northampton. So
Terrible.
I just left them all, and I've since resurrected it, and I finished it last night with
Oh,
my
brilliant,
producer Colin.
brilliant.
So we're just working on artwork today and topping and tailing. It should be ready to go by first week of August, I think.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. Well, so yeah, so it's going to be a bit of a trip down memory lane for you, but
Yeah.
also, I want to talk about your new stuff as well, because that's really exciting. And you've got such an illustrious career. I mean, I was looking back and listening to some of the stuff from 1967, and we'll go back beyond that. But your ability to get the most out of the guitar, even as a teenager, is quite phenomenal. I was listening to one of the tracks on Love, I think it was called, by Skip Bifferty, the first single. And it's like, my God, where did this come from? So what were your earliest musical memories when you were a kid? Because you'd have just caught the tail end of rock and roll, because you were quite young.
Yeah.
Roll,
I was quite young, and my sister was a bit older, and she had a job, and she used to, bring records home. We had a little dance set player. And as soon as she played like Little Richard and Elvis, Gene Vincent, all that rock and roll stuff, I was mad for it.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a guitar. I was playing the egg slice, doing, trying to get a tune out the egg slice. And my mum's knitting needles on the back of the biscuit barrel, drumming. And I was just mad for music and rhythm. I loved rhythm.
Yeah.
And, when Peggy Sue was a hit, Buddy Holly, they got me a little pretend. It was like a ukulele, really.
Yeah.
And I learned Peggy Sue on it in an afternoon.
Wow.
So just by ear. And then they realized we better get them a proper one, So they got me
like 8 years old or something, or 7
years
old when that came out.
I was about 7 or 8. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But shortly after that, I had my own band at school, playing for the headmasters' dances and, whatever charities the things were. Yeah. And we just used to do cover songs. And then me and Colin started writing tunes and everything. Yeah. And it just went from there until met Micky Gallagher, who had been away with the Animals, and he was back with the Chosen Few. And he said, Alan Hull's leaving, and
this is interesting to me, because number one, how did you learn the guitar? Did you have proper lessons? Or
I didn't at first, no, but then I just fumbled around. My Uncle Joe was a merchant seaman. He came back with a big fat Gretsch one time from California, where he was. I could hardly get my hand around it, but I really wanted to learn Chuck Berry riffs and things, just chucking away. And I was tiny, so I just kept on doing it, and we used to skag off school and go and play my friend's uncle's guitar in the lunch breaks and things like that. And we were all just wanting to, I don't know what, it wasn't decided who would play rhythm, who would play lead, so we just all wanted to do it. And when they got me a proper one, I fumbled around and I found a load of chords to me that sounded proper. They sounded good.
You made them up yourself. Did you not get the Burt Weedon book, Let's Play Guitar, or whatever it was called?
I don't think I did get the book, no. Yeah. I'd heard about it.
Yeah.
I wasn't enamored with Burt Weedon, I must admit. But no, then my brother's girlfriend's dad was a music teacher, Bill, and he had a grand piano in his house. And he offered to give me lessons. So I used to take my guitar over there in an evening.
Oh, brilliant.
And he'd say, what are you playing there? He said, that's C. Just put your little finger on there. That'll be C seventh. And if you take that finger off, it'll be C major seventh. And he taught me a few tunes and everything. I kept at it. And it was really
guidance, don't you? You need that.
It was real good bit of guidance. And then when Micky asked me and Colin to be in Chosen Few, when Alan Hull had left, Alan had asked me to do his demos as well, which he had just written Lady Eleanor. So I went, that was my first trip to a studio with Alan to Wallsend.
But did you not have any leanings towards, Alan Hull obviously joined Lindisfarne, and big folk band. I would probably say edging towards folk rock, wasn't it? It wasn't just sort of pure folk finger in the air, was it?
Alan had all sorts of songs, he was an expert. And so he asked me to, go with him and, form a band, which would have been Lindisfarne. But I said, I've already said yes to Micky Gallagher. I'll stick with the Chosen Few, which I did. And I'm still with Micky all these years later.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's quite a relationship. It's all the way back to the late mid 60s. It's incredible.
Alan, we did keep in touch, and Alan asked me to play on his solo album Pipe Dreams, which I really enjoyed. Which Colin
out in the 70s, yeah.
All my mates were on it, and we
Yeah.
had a fabulous time in a proper studio in Soho.
Yeah.
Tried doing that record.
Yeah.
And he was just a great songwriter.
Yeah.
Very strange bloke, but a lovely writer, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And then the chosen few. I mean, I became Skip Bifferty, and in 1966 you started doing all this psychedelic stuff. Amazing. Had you moved to London, by the way, by then, or were you still?
Yeah, we were in Newcastle, and we got a test for colour television for BBC Two when they were testing out the new colour cameras. So we all dressed up really over the top. The cameramen couldn't handle it.
With all
anyway,
clothes and everything.
Well, we had Andy Pandy stripe jackets on with lumberjack tartan shirts and baseball boots, Converse baseball boots, all colours. Yeah. Far too much for them to handle. Anyway, we failed that audition, but it was a friend of Brian Epstein's there, Alan Eisenberg, was an agent, and he saw us and he got us a gig at his mates club, the Marquee in Wardour Street.
Wow.
And they liked us, so they signed us up. So we had to move from Newcastle to London.
Right. Oh, so that's what sent you down to London. So that's about 1966 then, is it, John?
66, yeah. Summer of 66. And we got signed up by, the Damagers, I call them, Don Arden.
Well, I was going to ask you about him. I'll come on to him in a minute. But you recorded 2 or 3 singles and an album. And like I said, the guitar on Love, and actually that's my favourite of the 3 songs. I've been listening to quite a lot of it, doing a lot of research, but it's a wonderful track. So who was writing the music then, Johnny? Did you do it all together?
I wrote the music. Well, that was my power riff.
That's it, yeah.
And I wrote the chords, and then Graham Belle wrote the lyrics from sort of hippie pamphlet he was reading, I think, at the time. So hippie stuff. Yeah, we used to write a lot of songs with Graham, me and Colin and Micky Gallagher. And unfortunately, as you know, none of them were a hit because Don was hyping it and he got found out and everything. So we got like.
What was it like working with Don Arden back then? Because he was a tough cookie, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
Black Sabbath and Ozzy and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that was all brewing, but we were involved with his family really. I mean, Sharon was a bit young; she fancied our singer, I think. David Arden was about my age, and he used to mentor us a little bit. Yeah. He wasn't as his dad. He wasn't as strange as his dad. So. Yeah, but it was an education. I mean, we were very green just down from Newcastle not long ago, and we thought it's all going to happen, as you do when you're a teenager.
You're very hopeful, aren't you, when you're in your
Yeah.
People think it's going to kick off. And Graham Belle was a great singer, wasn't he? I mean,
he was a belter, yeah.
He was really good. And you followed him to. Well, I was going to ask you, how did you get Steve Marriott and Ronnie Lane on board to produce that album? And because Marriott really loved them.
Steve, well, we used to see them in the office because they were leaving Don as we were joining Don.
Oh, I see.
So they gave us the heads up, like, if Steve said, if he gives you an account at Lord John for the stage clothes, get 2 of everything because you ain't going to get any money. So we'd get like 2 pairs of crushed velvet trousers, 2 shirts, 2 jackets, put it on Don's bill. And sure enough, we never saw any royalties, and
really? Yeah,
it was just all gobbled up by him. But they were really good. Steve and Ronnie were, and Mac, and they were all pretty good to us, and sort of giving us advice and turning us on. Like I remember Steve played this Big Pink by the band when it came out, really loud in his barn. Out in somewhere, Marlow or somewhere, and it was just an eye opener. I was like, "Wow, this is what you can do!"
Yeah.
It wasn't pop, it wasn't rock, it was just a new fusion of, I mean, they were very accomplished musicians anyway. The band, and it just that turned the page for us. We thought, well, we're going to stop being this sort of pretend pop band in a way. We'll grow our hair and just do what we want to do, which is.
But it kind of defined what you were doing for the next 6 or 7 years before the Blockheads. It was that kind of cool rock. I mean, it was good, wasn't it? It wasn't pub rock, it wasn't glam, it wasn't prog, a little bit proggy, but it was just good rock music, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Right.
And you know, we were just following our bliss, really. It wasn't, we didn't have any sort of main thing in sight, like get on top of the pops or any of that. It was like, just do what you do.
It would have been pretty cool in '67 to be on top of the pops with Tomorrow or Hendrix.
We did tellies up in Manchester. We did like Scene at 6:30, and I think we went to Birmingham and did a telly.
Exciting.
But that's you know, that was just like part of the promo, that if you had a single out, the people had to get you on the telly. So
yeah. And what about this film that you did with Rita Tushingham? You did some soundtrack stuff for it, because
we did a few
in the film.
A Smashing Time, it was called.
Yeah, that's right.
Lynn Redgrave and Rita Tushingham.
Yeah.
And yeah, we did a couple of soundtrack things, and I also sang on Get Carter, the Michael Caine movie.
I was going to ask you that. Yeah,
me and Micky Gallagher got
the
job to do the Geordie sort of singers. You know, when he gets off the train in Newcastle, goes to the jukebox, puts it on, and that's us.
Oh, wow.
We sang about 5 of those songs. That was a good education, because we were doing it at Olympic in Barnes, a big studio where the Stones used to record, on a massive screen, you know, like 40-foot screen to picture. Yeah. It was really good. And we finished the session, and the producer, Jack Fishman, said, can you play tambourine? I went, yeah. He went, okay, hang around. And he was doing Frankie Howard's single with, what's her name? Can't think of her name now. And it was a cover of Je T'aime, which I played tambourine on. So, yeah, double bubble there.
That's amazing. But I was watching the Rita Tushingham film, and Tomorrow are actually in the film. I was scratching my head going, hang on a minute, that's not them. Why are Tomorrow in the film?
Yeah.
Tomorrow didn't, you know, Keith West and Twink and all them. Why didn't they do any songs for the soundtrack? It just felt a bit weird.
Well, that's down.
Looking what was going on.
I think that's it. The Pretty Boys got the screen.
No, it was. It was like pre My White Bicycle, wasn't it? And Jack and all that.
Yeah.
I love that, looking back on those old films, you know, just to see the roads in London and the shops that sort of stuff.
And the GPO Tower and all that.
Yeah, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it is amazing. There's a version of Man in Black by Steve Marriott on YouTube. I don't know if you've seen it.
No.
Yeah, it's a really cool version. Was it on YouTube? Was it on Spotify? I think it was on Spotify on one of his albums, Man in Black, if you look it up. So he must have loved the song because he recorded it himself.
Yeah. Steve, okay, I'll look that up.
You'll have to have a listen to it because it's really cool. It's really cool. And then Graham Bell, so then you became the Ark and joined Graham Bell as a backing. Well,
no, we had
Bell and Ark.
Me and Micky had a band called Ark.
Yeah,
with Tommy Duffy, Rob Tate, and it wasn't really going anywhere. And we sort of fell back in with Graham because he was getting involved with various record company people, and we thought that this is going to happen, you know. And when we teamed back up, we just became Belle and Ark. And we got the Who tour, supporting the Who around America with Alan White on drums. And that was a good education for me. And you know, the kindness was overflowing. Pete Townsend gave me one of his Gibson SGs because I had a beat up old Strat which was all rusty and snapping strings, and he felt sorry for me and he gave me a proper guitar. I was like, oh God, I was sleeping with it for about 2 weeks polishing. Yeah, they were really good, and they threw parties for us when we left, and they gave us a bonus, and they were just really, really good, kind people. It was brilliant. I was only 20, I think, then.
Oh wow! But you know, going back, I mean, you were sort of hanging around famous people when you were 16 and 17, and it's kind of it was like a baptism of fire, really, wasn't it? You were thrown.
It was, yeah. we were always bumping into Jimi Hendrix.
Oh,
You know, Egg and Chips with Hendrix, I call the chapter in the book.
oh, is that right?
And we used to meet up at the Watford Gap, you know, the Blue Boar.
Yeah.
They'd been in Wolverhampton and we were in Birmingham, and we're on the way back, you know, middle of the night, and we'd always say walk in and there's Jimmy having, you know, egg, beans and chips because he had a bit of money, and we just have egg and chips, you know.
Yeah, amazing. And Micky went on to be in Alan, the Animals, didn't he? So you must have been friends with, must have known Alan Price and the Animals. You come from the same sort of.
Not really. I played football with Alan a couple of times later on, but he was a right bully. And no, Micky, you know, got the gig when Alan Price left, and Micky was thrown in the deep end. Put on a flight to Scandinavia and half an hour rehearsal before they went on.
Oh my God! Really?
And he was straight into playing all those hits and everything, you know.
And Chaz was Jimi Hendrix's manager, wasn't he? So
yeah, Chaz actually managed me and Micky. Me and Micky were managed by Chaz for a while, around about the time he was trying to get Slades to be a hit later on.
They were all on Polydor, weren't they?
Yeah, they were trying and trying. They had different haircuts, had different clothes, boots, and the skinheads, and the long hair and the glitter. And they just kept trying. You know, it's so funny watching them when I used to go.
There was a case of just keep doing what you're doing and keep adapting. I mean, Slade are it, aren't they? I mean, they were doing that sort of psyche stuff with Kim Philby, not Kim Philby, Bowley in '66 or whatever, and then they were skinheads, and then they were glam. They tried everything, didn't they?
They did try everything.
But I think at the core of that, Jim Lee and Noddy, who could write songs. I mean, that's the bottom line, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I had some really good blows with Jimmy when I was with World Party and Carl Wallinger studio, and Jimmy could play just about anything.
Yeah.
And he was really, you know, fiddle, violin, guitar, bass, everything. Yeah. And he got on the guitar one time and I was like, oh, hello. What's all this? He wasn't shy at all. He was a really good player.
Really?
Yeah, they were a clever band. I mean, and with Noddy's voice, you just knew they were going to be a hit one day, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
He's a belter.
I thought that when you were, I've seen some live stuff of Belle and Arc, and it reminds me of Argent, you know, Rod Argent with the long hair and all that sort of stuff. Very charismatic lead singer, wasn't it? It's a shame that, I mean, I hadn't heard of him before I started researching you know. I thought, well, you know, if ever anyone should have gone on to stardom, he should have gone on to be a Bolan type character, shouldn't he?
I know, yeah. I think the source got to him in the end.
Did it?
Yeah. I remember when we were first with Ian, and we were in LA with Ian. I think we had just done the Lou Reed tour of the East Coast, and we went to the West Coast to do our gigs. And Graham was living over there, and he came by one morning to take us out to see Spencer Davis at his apartment, you know, because Spence lived there as well.
Yeah.
And Graham had already had a couple of cans. It was like 11 in the morning. We're thinking we're going for brunch, you know, or something. Spencer's house, but oh gosh, that was an eye opener. I realised, you know, you got to watch it because it doesn't mix with the socialising and drinking and music and all, you know.
Yeah, but it's kind of so easy, isn't it? You know, you're sitting in the dressing room and having a few beers.
I know.
Some people just don't drink anything before they go on stage, and
that's me. The last few weeks have been not. I normally have a spritzer or something to lighten up, but I haven't had anything at the last 3 or 4 gigs, and it felt really good. You know, felt you don't really need it. You know what I mean? You've had a lot of practice. You know the songs. You know the chords. You got to deliver, and the audience are there to hear those brilliant songs from the pen of Ian and Chaz mainly, and that's what they get now with the Blockheads. So we're all happy.
It is amazing. I mean, I've been reading quite a lot, and I knew a lot anyway because I bought New Boots and Panties when I was a kid. You know, it was one of those go-to albums because it wasn't really punk, but it was kind of drawn into the melee of punk at the time.
Yeah.
And
it was.
People associated Ian Dury with punk, just because he looked a bit odd and he sang in a particular way. But there's more music hall in that first album than anything else, really. When you listen to Billy Dicky and Clever Trevor and those sort of tracks,
Yeah,
music.
I remember reading the lyric to Billy Ricky Dicky the first time. I was reading it like a poem.
Yeah.
And go, wow, this is a bit different. And then because of the sort of the mix-up of funk, vaudeville, rock, and pop,
Yeah.
you know, it was like on the Stiff tour, we were very popular because we had the anthems, but we had the silly, the jokey, you know, and the clever Trevors and all that, you know, but we had the anthem, Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll. And later, you know, Reasons and Hit Me and all them. So
I find it fascinating how you all came together as the Blockheads, because obviously Chaz joined the later version of Kilburn and the High Road. Kilburn. And then there was you and Micky, and then there was Norman Watt, Roy, and Charlie Charles, and you all kind of gelled together as the Blockheads. And who screwed all that together?
Well, this is what happened. Me and Micky and Norman and Charlie were a band called Loving Awareness for Radio Caroline.
Radio Caroline thing, yeah.
Ronan O'Reilly was our manager, and Ralph Edmonds managed us. And you know, we used to do a lot of jingles and things like that, trying out all
the radio station.
Yeah, genres, and we started writing the Loving Awareness album. We had loads and loads of songs. So when it came to like being the band for Ian, you know, Ian said to Norman, we've got the Stiff tour and we need a band. And he goes, well, we are a band. We've got Micky and Johnny, you know. And that's when he found out we were Loving Awareness. So
yeah.
They say that there was some overtures made to Ronan by somebody from Ian's camp to let us go, but I'm not quite sure of the reality of that endeavor. Maybe somebody had a word and there might have been a bit of money exchange, but I'm not quite sure about the actual facts of that. But anyway, we ended up as the Blockheads, and we never looked back, you know.
Yeah.
Ian had a good team around him.
Well, I mean, he absolutely did, and so when you were on the first one of those Stiff tours, they all used to like pile into a big coach, and you'd got Larry Wallace and Elvis Costello and you guys, and I don't know if what was that band? Ruligator, one of them. Maybe they were on. Well, they were on Chiswick, weren't they? But you did these Stiff tours around the country, didn't you? Did you do?
Yeah, we did. We did the first one with Elvis and Reckless Eric, Nick Lowe, Dave Edmonds, Larry Wallace.
Yeah,
and yeah, I think that enabled us to do bigger gigs on our own, because we went from that and we did the Odeons, all the, you know, Hammersmith, Manchester, Birmingham, Edinburgh, all the big Odeons. Ian used to make them take a few of the seats out for the wheelchairs to get in. And yeah, we had a ball playing proper gigs, and we had a real good crew.
Yeah.
And a lighting rig and everything. And we went from there.
If anything's going to harden you into life on the road with Ian, then obviously doing those tours was going to do it, wasn't it? I mean, you must have been very natural players with him after you did those tours.
We did some massive tours, like in Europe. I think we held the record until Elton John of the most gigs in a row around Europe, because we went so many places in France, Germany, Belgium, Holland, Denmark, you know, all these countries. It was great.
Yeah, I bet. I saw an interview with that Larry Wallace, and he said something like, you know, we kind of knew that Ian and Elvis Costello were real pros, because I don't think that Larry really was. There were a few kind of hangers on like Lena Lovitch and people like that.
Yeah.
Just sort of come in by accident almost, haven't they?
Yeah.
On the Stiff label.
I think the Stiff tour, the first one, opened the gates, and you know, Dave Robinson realised he could do an awful lot by this package thing, you know.
Yeah.
So he did follow up with Lena Lovitch, etc.
Oh, it was the second one, was it?
Yeah. We weren't involved in that at all, because we had gone on and we were getting offers to do, as I said, you know, a lot of European cities, and then America, Australia, and places like that.
Yeah. It must have been something else touring with Ian and delivering that first album where Chaz and Ian kind of just pulled it all together, and that cool funk stroke pop stroke whatever it was.
Yeah,
Must have been something else, because really when I see you live now, it's right up your street, and you're going away on that guitar,
yeah.
those beautiful little solos in Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll, Hit Me With Your Rhythm.
Yeah,
All great.
I had a good time because a lot of the songs for live we didn't have an end, and so I just nicked some of my riffs from Loving Awareness tunes, and I tagged it on the end. So Clever Trevor, the end of that is from a Loving Awareness song.
Is that right?
Yeah, so we just tagged it on at the end because we couldn't close the door.
Yeah. Amazing.
And then we worked on What a Waste for about, blimey, 48 hours
to get
at the workhouse in Old Kent Road.
Yeah.
Cooking that up, because that was a demo from Kilbin's days, but it was very ploddy and it didn't have any of those great riffs in it that me and Norman and Micky made up.
Yeah. And Dave,
so we just borrowed all the good bits from Loving Awareness demos and shoved them into one of Ian's
all
songs.
of your combined history and forcing it through, and jazz it all up, I suppose, because it is kind of jazzy funk, isn't it? Some of that stuff,
It wasn't intentionally trying to be jazzy. I mean, what we've done now with we do Ian's songs now, and we've built in little pockets of everybody gets a little squirt, like In Betweenies, for instance. Chaz has got a whole piece where he can be as free as he wants. Dave can blow his saxophone in the part. I've got a bit in after the solo in Reasons. I go into a little bit of Jack Shit George and a bit of scatting, and that's our little freedom time,
Yeah. So, to really just come out, and Mike walks off and just lets you get on with it, doesn't he?
Yeah,
he just sits in the corner and crouches in the corner. Somebody told me.
Yeah, somebody was asking me the other day. They were at Chester and they loved the way we ended the set with the Lullaby for Francis.
Oh, I don't know.
Where we walk off one by one and leaving the bass and drums, and it's such a cool thing. And they're asking how it started, and I seem to remember it started in Japan with Ian, like about 95 or 96.
Yeah,
he thought it would be a good idea to chill them out at the end after Blockheads, with the Lullaby for Francis, a beautiful reggae song.
Yeah.
And I've put in all this mash it up like reggae riffs at the end, and just Allman Brothers and a bit of Weather Report, and it's just free fall. And then I walk off,
Yeah.
And then Chaz is good, and he walks off, and Micky walks off. It just leaves the bass and drums with it holding it together, and then this big lovely echo bit at the end, and that's the end of the show. And they thought that was great, especially on the open air one at the last weekend in Chester.
Yeah.
It really went over good.
I believe that it was rather hot in that place.
Yeah, it was hot.
Yeah. Now, obviously, we've spoken about your early years and joining the Blockheads, but you've had an illustrious career since the Blockheads first split in 1980. And moved into quite a lot of different projects, from Eurythmics and Dave Stewart and London Beat.
London Beat. I'll tell you the story. I lived opposite Pat Seymour, who was the MD for Eurythmics with Dave. Dave lived down the road from me, and I used to hang out at the church studios, Dave and Annie's studio. And I had played on a couple of tracks earlier on, Eurythmics and everything. I used to lend Dave guitars when his was somewhere else on the planet, And one time he asked, "Can you bring some guitars down?" So I took a Martin, a Strat, and another guitar. I can't remember. Yeah. And he's playing my Strat, and I'm playing this Martin electric. And he went, "Oh, that's good. Put that on." I went, so all of a sudden I'm on Jack Talking, the start of the first Spiritual Cowboys. And then I'm in the band. And when that was coming to an end, we traveled all over the world and everything. Pat Seymour got me the gig with Bananarama. Bananarama wanted to go on the road, And so me and Pat were cooking a band up for them. We were rehearsing, and I was going home every night going, because I had said to them, who's going to sing the descant? You know, who's going to sing the harmony? And they all went, oh, no, we're all going to sing the lead. And I went, well, that leaves me and Pat to sing the high descant. I wasn't looking forward to that. And it really wasn't cooking it up, you know, lovely people and everything, but it wasn't my cup of tea. And I got home one night from the studio and Paul Young was on the phone.
Yeah.
I thought, this is magic, because I had played with Pino on Kirsty McCall's demos before. Right. And I had seen him. He was playing with Jules and everybody. Yeah. And I really liked Pino. He was very gracious to me and kind and all the rest of it. I thought, oh, that would be great. I'd love to play with Pino again. Yeah. Not knowing that all the rest of the band were really good as well, you know. So anyway, I went from not being very happy with the Bananarama to, you know, making massive hit records with Paul.
Yeah.
And then when that was coming to an end, it just all dovetailed again magically, because we had played Medium and Talk were on. Yeah. And they had saw me and we liked each other. And the phone rang again and it was them. And I went, this is magic, you know. I mean, one gig's coming to an end, another one. So I went on that big huge tour of Europe with Talk where we did the live album in Montreux and everything was cracking.
I saw you with long hair and a bigger guitar whacking away in
really
Montreux with Talk. That was amazing.
And I'm very, very lucky, you know, as Geldof says, you're blessed, Turnbull, you're blessed, you know. And so that was coming to an end. And I think it was London Beat who were the singers with Paul Young at one point.
Oh, is that how it got together?
Yeah, it was always there was some, you know, connection there.
Yeah.
And how did I get onto that? Oh yeah, so at the end of Dave and the Spiritual Cowboys, Dave was sort of courting Bob Dylan, and he had thrown a party for Dylan at the church studios. And all my gear was there, and the studio manager, Worthy, said, look, your gear's all set up, your boogies there, your guitar's there, bring some harmonicas, you know. So I went down bristling with harmonicas in my jacket pockets like that. And Dylan just took one look at me and went, like that. He was really grumpy, you know, didn't want to jam or nothing. And anyway, I was stood with Carl Wallinger, who was my neighbour, World Party Carl, Bob Geldof and Sabrina Guinness, who was like minding him that night, I think. And anyway, Carl goes, oh, I'm just going to talk to Eric Idle a minute. He went up to speak to Eric Idle. It was full of stars, this party. And Geldof goes, do you want to come to Germany and Canada and America? And I went, yeah, play guitar, yeah. I said, yes, you know. And then so he wandered off and Carl came back and he went, we need a guitarist. And I said, oh, when do you start? He said, November. I said, oh, okay, then where are we going? You know, and I was juggling Geldof's band and World Party and the Blockheads for about 32 years.
My God. But it feels like you've just, I mean, you've got that thing on the Blockheads page which says I've always been the right person at the right time or something. And that's
right place at the right time.
One of your mottos. It just feels like you've gone ding, 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 ding. And
well, there's a lot of luck going on, but I tell you, you know, you do meet some kind people. I've always been helped by, in tough times, I've always been helped by really thoughtful, kind people.
Yeah.
When we were starving, me and Micky, after Belle and Arc and all that, and we were just working for a publishing company, Robbins EMI, doing covers of Tim Harden songs or wherever it was, and we got friendly with Terry Doran from Apple, who was sort of George's right hand man at the time.
Yeah,
and he used to send the Apple car around with like full of groceries for us because we were starving, you know.
Is that right?
we were nicking pints of milk, you know, from the corner shop now.
Oh man!
And all of a sudden, it was people like him and Chris Blackwell really helping us out with the food parcels and all that.
Yeah,
it was. Well, they were really kind to
probably without blowing smoke up your ass. It's more about your character, isn't it? You know, the fact that that people wanted to help because you were difficult or obstreperous or whatever the word is. You know, you must be a certain type of character to sort of invite those kind of helpful people, because the industry is littered with non-helpful people, for want of a better expression, right?
Yeah. No, we've always known there was people in the shadows that didn't come forward. I mean, I think that George used to help Ronan out with a bit of dosh now and then when Caroline was
George Harrison,
struggling. Yeah.
yeah.
And Ronan was friends with all of them. And he got his time. Ringo gave us time at the studio to do the demos for the Loving Awareness songs when we had Simon Phillips on drums. It was magic time.
Amazing.
And
I was going to ask if you'd encountered the Beatles on occasion.
I met John in the speakeasy one night, and he was really drunk, and he just came up under our table. It was like 2 a.m. or something. He goes, "Can you help me find my glasses?" And I went, "Yeah." So we're all down on my knees trying to find his glasses for him. And somebody went, "Got them," like that. And he went, "Thanks, mate." And off he went. And I met Paul a couple of times, with George Martin at Air Studios.
Yeah.
And Ringo was another really gracious bloke, very kind to us. Yeah. I don't think he charged Ronan for the studio out at Tittenhurst. It was just like giving people a leg up because he had,
Well, he didn't need it, did he? I mean,
he didn't need it, and he wasn't. He was, I mean, when he recorded, he probably went to George's or something. I don't know.
Yeah. But by the same token, he didn't have to help anybody. And therefore, you have to sort of say, well, that's his nature, if they're helpful people.
Yeah.
I've not heard a bad word said about McCartney, to be honest with you. I'd love to meet him sometime, but I feel like I'm running out of time, He's 81 now, isn't he?
Yeah, but I remember, he sang on the brand new Boots and Panties album. He chose Abracadabra.
Yeah.
I wasn't there that day. I was away with Carl in Glasgow with World Party, but Chaz was there at the studio, and he said Paul came in with his Martin. He learned my rhythm part, and Chaz going, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Oh, I like to know the chords, So he's playing the rhythm part, and then he started belting it out. And Chaz goes to him, "Hey, Paul, you can half sing." And he went, "I've had a lot of practice." But he really gave it his old darling on that one. I thought he sang it an octave up from Ian,
Oh, did he? I mean, that was quite an interesting album because it had Robbie Williams singing a track on it. Well, didn't it? Had quite a few different stars.
Keris Matthews was on it. Sinead. Who else did them? Well, it was Madness did a track. Billy Bragg. There was a lot of people. It was really good. I thought it was, it was for the cancer backup, Ian's favourite charity. Yeah. But the record company, East Central, they didn't really get behind it. They could have made a bigger effort. At least I think we got it. We got a squirt on Jules later once with Robbie singing. But apart from that, there was only the benefit we did at Brixton Academy that was a big deal. There wasn't enough put into the promo of that record. Yeah. And I think now it's just on the shelf.
It is. It's still on Spotify, so you can actually listen to it. But do you think that Ian is undervalued in musical history? Should he be more revered than he is?
In some quarters, he is. I mean, he's quite well revered here and in certain European countries. Yeah. I think in America we missed out because they didn't really get him in a lot of places we went. They got him sort of, in New York, in Boston, maybe Detroit, places like that. But all the other places, it was over their heads,
How can somebody in Seattle, for example, or wherever it is, or Kentucky, understand what Billericay Dickey's all about, for Christ's sake?
No, they can't.
Get it, are they?
No.
I mean, they'll get Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll because it's the thing that was going on. What do you like? I like sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It was kind of a euphemism, whatever.
I think they got Hit Me and Reasons.
Yeah.
In foreign parts.
Yeah.
The biggest sort of place that was easier for us was New Zealand and Australia and Canada.
Oh, really? Yeah, that makes sense.
The Commonwealth.
Oh boy. Yes. Oh dear.
Yeah, I think all the expats and everything were crying out for something like Ian to happen.
Yeah.
With a good band behind him. And I think they realised that we weren't vanguards of the punk movement at all. We were something else completely.
We weren't threatening in that way, and even with the oi oi thing, that's just it's just a nice sort of encouragement, isn't it? Rather than
Yeah.
arms or
I remember one night on the Stiff tour with Ian and Elvis, and they were all spitting. It was like, what? And Elvis just went, "Stop spitting!" Like that. He was really telling them off like a headmaster. Because he got a bit more, but and unfortunately, that's what people did. I mean, I think that's how sadly Joe Strummer caught a very obnoxious disease from getting a gob.
I believe so. So it was horrible, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
I remember
really
Pete Shelley from Buzzcocks talking about scraping phlegm off his guitar.
Yeah, yeah,
Pretty horrible. But in a way, you look at Ian Dury's lyrics, and if you really, really listen to them, you do realise what a genius he was. And I saw a program on him, and it must have been in the late 90s, and he literally had books and books and books of couplet, rhyming couplet lyrics that he'd pick up, throw away, bits of paper everywhere.
He had massive, like A3 or A4, the big one.
Yeah.
Cards. I used to watch him writing up the couplets. A lot of it went in the bin. He was very scrupulous about his rhyming and his couplets and everything like that.
Yeah.
And Hit Me had loads of verses.
Yeah.
As did a lot of the songs. A lot of it went in the bin once he had honed it down to how he wanted it.
Yeah.
And there was nobody really telling him. He didn't have a rival.
No.
He was his own man. And because
nobody was doing it similar. The closest thing would have been somebody like John Cooper Clarke. Poet.
Yeah, John's a poet. That's it. Yeah. I mean, sometimes one line will pop up from an obscure song. There's one called Cowboys we did. And Ian said, "So cherish every moment that you're hot. Then at least you'll have some memories when you're not." There's little things like that. They're just gems.
Yeah. Absolutely cool stuff. Just coming on to you then. You're coming on to you. You brought an album out in 2012.
Yeah, Quantum Frolics.
Frolics, yeah. And I was listening to some of that, and I've heard you speak recently or a few years ago in an interview that I watched that you were working on a second album. So do you want to, because it's obviously taken a lot longer than you expected it to, hasn't it?
It has. I had certain setbacks. I was doing it myself. I had a 24-track machine that was given to me by a kind person. And I mastered that. It wasn't really a computer, although it was SSL, the flying faders and all that. Yeah. And I had got that together, and I did about 13 demos with various people playing on it, mainly me. And then the machine died, and I took it to a lab, and they couldn't resurrect the hard drive. So I lost all of that and had to start again.
What happens? Oh, right.
And then when I started again, I had to move. I moved house. The machine was put in storage badly and lost another load of songs. That's when I decided to go to a friend's studio, 2 friends' studios actually, and let them be the engineers and let them be in charge of the hard drive, And then lockdown.
That's what they're good at. I mean, that's why.
So I had like nearly an album compiled when lockdown hit.
Yeah.
And I could never go back to the studio. I even left one weekend. I came home. I left all my guitars, my pedals, ukuleles, mandolin, everything at the studio. I didn't see them for months,
Oh,
no. And then I went back to Colin Gibson, my old school pal, who's now my producer in Hastings. He lives, and we started resurrecting things and doing new tracks. And as I say, last night we compiled the running order we chose 13 songs out of 23 for the album, and we mocked up some artwork ideas that we had for a cover.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's almost there. It's just topping and tailing, and I've got a book here with the credits for what we call the tasty players or participants, which is Chaz and Micky, Norman and Charlie, Gillard, Dylan, Crispin, Mick Gaiman, Colin Gibson, Alice Platt, Mark and Water, Mark Snowling, Dean Richards. A lot of people
A lot
to
of people.
credit.
Is Crispin Davy Payne's son?
No, he's another Payne. He's in. Funnily enough, he's in Cornwall as well as alongside Davy, but
Right.
they're not related.
I just assumed when I saw Payne that, it's not a common name.
Yeah. No, I know. Crispin was Mick Gaiman's friend, my harmonica.
Oh, okay.
But he sadly passed away 2 years ago.
Mickey Blue,
and
Mickey Blue Turnbull, is that a son of yours?
Oh, that's my eldest son. Yeah, he programmed some. He was messing about, and I went, "Oh, that's good. We'll use that."
I thought
get
you
a bit
got
of that.
the family involved. Just pull them all in.
Yeah,
that's beautiful if you can do that, though, isn't it? You can.
Oh, it is. And I mean, the longest working relationship, apart from me and Micky Gallagher, is with Colin Gibson, who I went to infant school with him. We had our first band when we were about 10 at school, and now I'm still. And we were in bands in Skip Biffity and for years and years. And then he went off with Ginger Baker and loads of
him working with Ginger, yeah.
And now we're back together and we write songs and he produces and he's a good artist as well.
What's the album called, Johnny? What's the album called?
The new one's called Never Mind the Robots.
Oh, okay.
That's the working title. It did have a lot of working titles, but I settled on that one for now because the artwork reflects that title. Somehow, in a very bizarre way.
Does it mean anything? I mean, are we talking artificial intelligence here or something?
Yeah. We dabbled a little bit with. I bought a Lala AI for £100 when it first came out.
Yeah,
because I had a rip of a monitor mix that we couldn't get into, so we got the stems from this little tricky AI thing, and we were able to take off the horrible guitar solo I didn't like and put a brand new fresh one on that made it made me feel excited about it. we redid some vocals and some harmonies and everything, but then we left it alone. We never touched any more AI. I started doing some of the songs again completely afresh with Colin down in Hastings. And that's what we've ended up mixing. So, but there's that some of the tracks on this new album are things I've resurrected because when I moved from Crouch End in London, and Em found these big tapes in the loft that I had somehow carried with me all the time, and they were from the time when the Who lent us their studio.
Oh, wow.
And it was me and Norman and Micky and Charlie. It was like Loving Awareness meets the Blockheads, but with me and Charlie singing. And there was one track on there that I had written with Colin. I thought, we've got to work on this, Air Raid Precaution. So we cooked that up. And that's the opening track on the album. And then there's another track that was an outtake from Where's the Party, the first Blockheads album after Ian passed away. And it was one of my songs that got, bypassed. But I still liked it. It's called Anniversary Bash. So we worked on that and we mixed that because I had all the stems and everything. Luckily, I used to make a habit of asking engineers for a monitor mix, run us off a CD of that, And when it was Philip Bagnall who engineered a lot of our stuff, bless him, he was very thorough. So you couldn't really tell it was a monitor mix because he had got a perfect balance. Maybe the drums are a bit too up front. Well, who cares, It just captured that whole day's work. When you went home at night, you wanted something to listen to. So I made the habit of getting a monitor mix often. And I'm glad I did because I could rip them later on. And, that's from 2001, that song.
Wow.
So there's all sorts on this, right up to, say, when the Who gave us their studio in 81, I think. And then there's all sorts of, mishmash and rips and tricks, everything, right up to...
the feeling of the album? Is it blues-based?
Oh, no, it's just like Quantum Frolics. It's me. I like I like all sorts of people.
Yes.
I like Joni, I like James Taylor, but I like Weather Report and I like Crowded House. I like all
Yeah.
sorts of music.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that reflects really. I've had a long affair with the ukulele since I was
I know
very
you
small.
played it me at Barnoldswick. you played
So
that song about the panda.
oh yeah, yeah. Oh, Ian, yeah. But no, there's one on the new album
Yeah.
which I wrote on ukulele. It's called Everything's Broken. And Colin did a really good. We did a like homage to George Formby on it, but we
I love
put
that for
a
me.
30s kind of brass
Yeah.
bandish down with all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's the light relief on the album. But the other songs are just my journey through love life and whatever.
Being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, yeah. Just like I remember Dave Stewart said to me, we were talking once, and he went, I said, you're very prolific with all these songs you keep writing. He said, I just think of them as like little postcards to myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes you pay them more attention, they turn into something, and what he was hinting at is like, if you take care of the quantity, keep going, the gems will pick themselves, and they'll become the songs that you put on the album.
Well, they are postcards to you.
If you revisit a song after 3 months of letting it lie fallow, and it still sparks joy in you, as Marie Kondo would say, then that's worth working on. That's worth taking it to completion.
Have you actually sat down and written a poem and then put it to music, or would the
I've got
written together?
Yeah, I've got like various notepads that I've kept over the years because I used to do this thing called Morning Pages, Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way. It's you just write stream of consciousness, no censor. It's only for you. Nobody's ever going to read it but you. Yeah. And I did that, started that long time ago, left it, went back to it, and I've since found, and they're all dated, it'll say like 2006, December 2006, and I read it and it's like, whoa. So sometimes you pull out little bits that mean something that, are still relevant.
But they're almost like, you talk about postcards to yourself. They are postcards to the future self, aren't they?
Yeah.
Writing them down and dating them, you're almost writing a message to your future self, because at some point you're going to open the book, right?
Yeah, I didn't know that at the time of writing that I would ever look back on them.
Yeah.
Maybe there's other books. Like I've got so many files and bits of paper, and when I had a project, when I started Frolics 1, I had various foolscap books with plans and lyrics and running orders and all the rest of the work and everything. But there'd always be scribbling at the back of little couplets or wherever occurred to me, So you sometimes go through you come across a gem, you think, I never used that, I'll use it now,
I was talking to Chaz because I interviewed him last year, and he was talking to me about the fact that when you record a song, and I know that Hit Me With Your Rhythm Stick took a lot of takes, like 24 takes or something like that. And he said to me, Nigel, he said, when you record a song like that, it's literally just those 4 minutes of your life that have been recorded. Okay, there's maybe lots of different versions gone in, but it's those 4 minutes. And when he described how he told Ian to imagine he was being hit by a boxing glove when he went, hit me, to record that absolute moment. And he said it was just those few seconds, that's what makes the song. And it's only those four minutes that anybody will ever hear. Those 4 minutes in that studio at that time. And it is like a postcard to everybody's future self who sits in a studio and records something. It takes them back to when they were, however old he was at that time, 30 years old, whatever. Yeah. It is fascinating, isn't it, when you think about it like that? The moments in time.
Yeah, I recall, I think we did about 13 or 14 takes, and we chose take 2 to work on and Hit Me.
Yeah.
And all the time that, because it was me and Norman right, next to each other. So I clocked what he was doing. So I learned his bass part as he was making it up.
Yeah.
sometimes live, I'd go and double them an octave up, just for fun, put a smile on his face, and well, I remember we used, instead of a click, we had a TR-808 or 707 drum machine, like Sly used to use, Sly and the Family Stone, and that was in Charlie's headphones. So you only hear, it's mixed in when it goes Eskimo, Arapaho, and you can hear the TR-808, which was Charlie's rhythm track. That's what he was doing it to. Yeah. We hardly ever used a cowbell or anything like that on Waiting for Your Taxi. We used Micky's Arp Odyssey on random sample and hold. Like Barbara O'Reilly, but without the gorgeous notes. And we used to use Strange Things for as a rhythm track instead of a click.
Yeah.
It's a bit sterile when you've got a cowbell. I said bonk, bonk,
yes.
bonk.
It's a bit overbearing, isn't it?
So we didn't have that in our cans. Me, Norman, Chaz, and Micky. Charlie had the rhythm thing, but Laurie mixed a little bit in. That was a nice touch, I thought.
You talked about the ukulele and George Formby. Are you a big George Formby fan? I know George Harrison was a big George Formby fan.
Yeah.
All pervasive through history and the Beatles and everything else,
Oh, yeah. I think, because I'm of an age, it was, I'm of an age where there was no radio pop, anything. It was Radio Luxembourg eventually. Before that, it was just the light program.
Yeah.
And it was Vera Lynn and George Formby,
Yeah,
so,
pretty much.
I don't know. Friday night is music night on the radio, My dad'd come in and push the settee back. My mum and dad would be dancing on the,
right?
And I'd be on the lino tap dancing at the side like this. That was all we had, I mean, it was great when, as I said, my sister, who was a bit older and everything, when she got, she had the bouffant hair, and then she went out with Hank Marvin once,
Really?
Yeah. He took her on a date with Cliff and Bruce. They took her out. And anyway, she had, quite good taste for a while around, and turned me on to all the, the new rock and roll, Elvis, Buddy Holly, and everybody. And then she sort of changed. She'd bring home like Pat Boone and Frank Sinatra. I was going, what's going on? What happened to Little Richard? But that was what she went through. But it had already grasped me by the short and curlies, and that was my future was going to be rock and roll.
But some people lose the musical chops, if you like. They start out being quite edgy, and they're into punk rock, and then suddenly they're listening to bloody ABBA and stuff like that, which I could never stand. Some people seem to regress musically and stop challenging themselves and listening to new stuff and coming up with new stuff.
I don't know. I mean, we did this gig in Sweden with Ian once, and ABBA, the band, not ABBA, their band were on before us, and they were shit hot, excellent musicians, really good, lovely people. And I went, well, they're on the records. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
That's why they're classic records, because they're proper records.
Yeah. The proper songwriters. I mean, they are. That when anybody mentions ABBA to me, it's like, well, my mum liked ABBA. It's like,
I mean, in the same way, like Beatles were very lucky because, if Paul said, "I want a flugelhorn," this, and George would go, "Well, I've got just the person for you," and then Alan Civil, playing the, and when Lennon wanted the sort of funny harpsichord thing or whatever, George Martin said, "Well, yes, I can do that. I'm going to have to slow the tapes a bit." So he did it half time, sped it back up, all the innovation and everything. And on Sergeant Pepper, George Martin knew exactly what horn section he wanted to fill that part, and cellos with violas and violins. They were very lucky to have somebody really talented and accomplished, even though George Martin used to do comedy records for the group. He still had all the background of being classically trained piano player.
He was an odd choice because he was known for his comedy singles, wasn't he?
Yeah. And the first time I remember when we came to London, and we did the test for colour television, and we went to the marquee there, and then they put us in Decca Studios in West Hampstead to do some demos. Don put us in there, I think. Yeah. And so we were in the middle studio next to Engelbert Humperdinck in this studio and Tom Jones in that studio. And they had already had hits. You know, this is 67, I think, or...
He's Released Me, I think it kept...
yeah. And so, you know, the studios were packed full of instruments, and there was musicians coming and going on their sessions. I mean, and we used to think, well, we can do what we want, you know, even though we had a producer who was a bit strict on the knockoff time and everything. Yeah. We tried out the glockenspiels, and we tried out marimbas, and Colin was playing the bass with a bow with chalk on it, and through a fuzz pedal. And then we'd take all the tack piano. We'd take the tacks out the tack piano, put tin foil in, or just experimenting with sounds to get like a different sound to everybody else. Do you know what I mean?
That's amazing.
But I suppose the benchmark was obviously Beatles, because they had the best engineers and producers.
Yeah.
So
well,
it was a really good time to be young and spunky, and you know, and wanting to experiment, but still learning your chops. You know,
but also given the opportunity to do so and to be inventive. To pair a piano and chuck some spoons on the strings or whatever to try and make it sound different. I mean, you were given the time to muck about, and certainly looking back at, say, you know, the Beatles recordings, the Get Back stuff. I mean, they were just given all the time they wanted, weren't they? They could just fit in Twickenham or in Abbey Road and just do whatever they wanted. It's looking back on that stuff, and look at those films, it looks like yesterday.
I know, but you know, it was the first time that people were using a studio as an instrument.
Yeah.
You know, when Paul would bring in all these samples, he had, you know, loops and everything like that, and Lennon would get into it, you know, Tomorrow Never Knows, and that was the first sort of looping thing I'd ever heard.
Backward guitars and all that sort of stuff. Fascinating. Look, it's been fascinating talking to you, Johnny.
Oh, good, thanks.
What's your favourite Blockhead song of all time, and what's your favourite song of all time? Clearly, there are those that you prefer to play on stage, but you'll have one or two favourites, you know?
I do like playing What a Waste live. I like a lot of them live, but What a Waste, you know, I've written into it, and I get a little squirt of freedom in one of as I do in Reasons to Be Cheerful.
Yeah.
So that's always good, because it's a great chorus, and the words are funny, and the music's interesting. It's never quite the same each night we play it. Neither is In Betweenies. They're always slightly, you know, they're the same tempo, but other people are putting stuff in that turns you on, and I guess that's jazz, and you know.
Well, it kind of is, and that's why. But when I see you on stage, there's a knowing that only comes between people who've played together for a very, very long time. And Chaz can just look out, and I see Chaz side glancing, look at you, and just nodding, and then you'll nod at, you know, Dave Lewis, and he'll nod at Nathan, and you know, you all gel so well together. And even Mike now, after a couple of years, it's all sort of gelling so well together on stage, where there's that respect where one can just walk off and let you get on with it and give you a nod, and you know what you're doing, and you're not overstaying your welcome, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know, this time, what have we got to lose? You know, we're doing what we love to do. We're getting a bit of dosh. We got a festival tomorrow, Guildfest Festival, which I did years ago when Ian was alive. It was brilliant. We did it with Jules. Brilliant park. You know, it's not Glastonbury, but who cares? It's a festival, so we're going to have a good time in the open air then.
And you've got a lot of dates coming up, haven't you?
Yeah, there's more and more coming in, but if anybody wants to know, you just go to theblockheads.com/live, and you see all the dates for the rest of this year, and I think there's a few already gone in for next year too.
Yeah, and I always ask as a final question. Most people have got like a secret guilty pleasure, or I asked one guy what he did, and he said he liked building extreme Lego sets, and he had a whole room set aside for building Lego sets, and another guy, extreme frisbee. These things exist. And I just wondered, apart from whistling and yodeling, what's your guilty pleasure?
Well, my passion used to be, until I had a bad fall and my back is not what it was. My passion used to be table tennis, and I persuaded Carl with World Party when we were with a big band and we were going all over the planet. We had a table tennis tournament that started in Portsmouth and ended in Toronto, and I won. I was the champion table tennis player. Yeah,
you were the champion.
And you know, we'd play all over. I remember playing in Glasgow at Barrowlands and had a table tennis. We thought, wow, this is great fun. You know, after a sound check, quick knock up, bit of a tournament. So yeah, I was mad for. I was actually runner up at Butlins, and no, I can't think of the year, but when I was about 12 or something, I was runner up table tennis.
Oh wow!
So that's my secret passion.
Yeah, that's your secret passion.
But still, in lockdown, I got back into the ukulele, and I also got back into playing fingerstyle, like Chet Atkins, kind of.
Oh right.
Without a pick, you know. Here he is, fingering a pick all the way. I
always think of Les Paul with the old, you know, the Mary name. Yeah. Finger picking. He was so fast on the
guitar. I know. I've had a few things I got into. I really got into the Ebo at one point.
Yeah.
And that was on. I produced an album by a girl called Sylvie Marichal with Dave Stewart, a French girl singer, and it was at the height of my Ebo technique was coming on, and I had such fun. There was a lot of Eurythmics people around.
Yeah,
and I could make the guitar sound like a string machine or a emulator or a mellotron or something, you know.
Yeah.
The volume and the, you know, it just sets back that feedback loop.
Yeah, sounds like a cello almost.
Yeah, can do.
Sort of drone to it.
Although I was getting a lot of seagull sound effects out of it, a bit like Betty Blue soundtrack or something, you know.
I think Chaz made that too. Yeah. Well, that's great. So thanks so much for talking to me today, Johnny. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you've enjoyed it. We'll top and tail it and publish it and get it on pretty soon, I think, if all the recordings.
Excellent. Well done.
Yeah, they're okay. But
it was good to chat.
Yeah, good fun, isn't it? So I hope the festival goes well for you tomorrow, and I hope the tour does well. And well, it always does. Whenever I come and see you, everybody in the room has a big smile on their face.
Yeah,
absolutely enjoy it, don't they?
I know.
And some of the people sitting at the front, they just know every single word, and they're singing along to you.
I know.
It's thrilled to watch you live, and I will come and see you again. But again, thanks so much for spending it with me, Johnny. It's been great.
All the best, mate.
Real pleasure. You take care.
Cheers. Bye-bye now.
Bye.